In special operations, we actually say that situational awareness, it's not a skill set. It's an everyday baseline condition. There's 3 things that you need to do with situational awareness. Know the environment that you're in, know what the baseline of that environment is, and then know what's changing about that environment.
Trevor Fortner is a former US Navy bomb tech, from disarming explosives in war zones to teaching civilians situational awareness.
Trevor, do you think technology is making us safer or putting us in more danger?
So I think technology, it does have its security issues that we are probably not doing enough due diligence to protect people.
You get up close with governments. Do you see them lying to their people?
Oh, 100%. In order for a statement to actually be a lie, there has to be intent to deceive you. There's information that they will withhold. They will steer you or the story a very particular way. Elite operators are trained to think in 3 different pillars when we solve problems under pressure. The first one, we slow our environment down. I'll tell you a story where slowing down saved my life.
Just before we get into today's episode, we have a favor to ask you, and that is, can you please hit that subscribe button? It's somewhere there on the screen for you. It's very easy, and it means so much to us as creators.
This allows us to keep raising the bar on the guests that we bring you guys every week and build our community even bigger. So hit that subscribe button and let's get into today's episode.
Trevor, we want to start off on a bit of a sad note. Australia last year experienced a horrific attack at Bondi Beach with 15 people losing their lives. As a trained professional, what are you seeing in an event like this versus what, say, the general public are seeing?
It's a little bit of the same. It's the, first of all, it's always a sad times when you have one or two or a group of individuals that go out and attack innocent people. Like, take away the guns, take away the knives. We've got a bigger problem with the emotional stability of our society, where there's a need for a group of people that want to go out and cause harm to innocent people. That's the much bigger picture that we should be looking at. And then when we look at the firearms, like I'd spent time living in Australia, and when I heard about this and that weapons were involved, or firearms specifically, I was quite shocked by that. So I realize in your country that a lot of your events that you have, and you have security and undercover security there, you don't have a lot of entry control points that's similar to your airports that would be scanning people from bringing weapons in. So I hate to say that most of your country, even though the weapons are generally illegal, you can pretty much carry a weapon a lot of places in Australia, because it's kind of assumed that you're not allowed to have them. And there's not a lot of these checkpoints set up around your country. So now that the Bondi event happened, it's a stark reminder that there will always be savage people out there. And it's our responsibility as human beings, as men, women, mothers, fathers, to have our own due diligence about the environments that we're in. Even though it's a beautiful beach, Bondi Beach is world famous and beautiful, but you still need to be situationally aware, understand what the baseline environment is, and take responsibility for yourself. And to see some of the Australians actually run towards and tackle that individual, that there's nothing else that should have happened right then. I would have liked to seen people rush towards them a little bit faster, but I understand that they're not special operations trained. It takes a minute to orientate to that type of situation, particularly when civilians are not inoculated to that type of stress.
Okay, so from your perspective, when you watch like a rapid public attack like this, what gaps in training do you see?
Oh, the first one, we have this phrase that people say, special warfare mindset, special force operator, they're tough, they're robust, they're alpha males. It's not that we're that type of personality. The training that we go through forces a set of behaviors that we either adapt or we don't make it through. Most people think that you fell out of special operations training because of physicality. I've had a number of teammates of mine, or rather classmates, not make it through the training program, and they were much fitter than me. When I was in special forces, I never really stopped to think like what separated myself from everyday civilians that had not went through the same type of training. And it wasn't until I started working with corporate entities that I realized the way I make a decision is vastly different from most civilians. And so I started going back and looking at some of our training and reflecting on it, and identified 3 pillars that separate our thought process. Elite operators are trained to think in 3 different pillars when we solve problems under pressure. Those pillars, the first one is that we slow our environment down, right? We slow the environment down so that we can orientate and observe the situation. You can't make a logical decision or an effective decision if you've not orientated to the situation. And that's what I think a lot of civilians, including the Bondi Beach and some of the things that we have going on in the US right now in Minneapolis, is that people are reacting quickly and emotionally. They're not taking the time to slow down, to pause, to orientate to the situation, to observe what is actually happening, and then make a decision. They just immediately jump to this emotional state, and their decisions are emotionally based and they're illogical. And we see that in all the instances, both in my country and yours. So I would like to see that our society takes the situational awareness a little bit more serious. I know in the last few years that term's been beat to death, and it sounds like it's something like really tactical and special operations. But situational awareness is really quite simple. There's 3 things that you need to do with situational awareness. Number 1, know the environment that you're in. Number 2, know what the baseline of that environment is. And then number 3, know what's changing about that environment. And as you look around, most people are with their heads down into a cell phone. They're not looking around public places, observing what that baseline is.
Why are those 3 pillars so important, Trevor? How can that save you in a scenario?
Well, I tell you what, in our training, there was never a course like on Tuesday at 5 a.m. We're going to sit down and have this special warfare mindset curriculum class. It's something that as we go through what we call stress inoculation, through scenarios that are constantly evolving and changing and putting you under constant pressure from various angles, you start to either slow the environment down because you realize if I react and just make a decision, I start to lose the clarity of actual environment conditions. And then that just snowballs and I can't recover from that. I'm already being drugged down a path and I can't pause it and recover it. So one of the first things that we do, particularly in bomb disposal, disarming a bomb, is we want to slow the environment down. And I want to iterate that slowing the environment down is not the same as hesitation, because hesitation will in fact get you killed. But we purposely slow the environment down. We control our breathing, we control our tempo, and we go through a series or a process of observing the environment in a proven method that we practice over and over and over till it's almost subconscious. So in special operations, we actually say that situational awareness, it's not a skill set. It's an everyday baseline condition. Have you ever heard of the color codes, like red, green, yellow, as far as your awareness levels go?
No. Can you talk us through that?
I don't say each country, each organization kind of uses a different color code. Like CIA has their colors, same colors, but different meaning, slightly different meanings. Our Special Operations Command, same colors, but a couple of different slight meanings. For example, green is my everyday operation. Like I'm observant out 5 meters in front of me, out to 25 meters in front of me. I know what my immediate environment around me is happening. I know if something is changing in that environment. One of the things in combat zones is we live on this high energy of emotion, and you can only sustain that for a short amount of time. And then you have to come back and get rest and let your brain slow down a little bit. In everyday life, we have the same saying. Your situational awareness should be turned on. It should be engaged. It shouldn't be what Hollywood describes as hypervigilant or constantly looking over your shoulder. It's not anything hypervigilant. You're just being consciously and purposely aware of your environment, which establishes a baseline. For example, you like coffee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a favorite coffee shop in your town? And you don't have to say the name for where you're at, but you got a local shop that you go to?
Of course, yeah.
You got a same time about every day that you go there?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if you walked in there tomorrow and the environment was completely different, do you think you would recognize it?
Totally. Yep.
Okay. So that's the baseline, right? You walk into a place, and if it's my first time walking in, I obviously have to take a little bit more time to assess and gather information. If it's a place that I go to repetitively, I can build that historical baseline over time, right? Most people that I see and I train, they go to the same type of coffee shop, same scenario as you, and they say what you say. Well, of course, when I walk in there, I'm going to notice it's different. So a couple of clients, one of the scenarios I run, I'll be sitting in that establishment in an outfit that they have seen me in before. They will walk in, order their drink, sit down, have it, and leave, and never notice that I'm sitting in there and I'm a paid client of theirs. Like, that is a shocking realization that most of us think, oh, I'll pay attention to this, I'll catch that, until you're in a moment like Bondi Beach and you go from, I'm taking my kids to the beach, to, oh my gosh, there's gunshots, people are screaming, there's chaos around you, and then people just start to panic, as opposed to slowing the environment down.
Okay, so when you mention a scenario like that, where you're sitting there in that same shirt, we're all going about life, doing our thing, not really observing much around us. When you're walking through life with all of this knowledge in your mind, what are you seeing in a city like Sydney or New York City or London when you're walking around? Are you seeing it completely different to the way that the average civilian sees it?
I see what you see visually, right? This is really important. I see the same things that you are capable of seeing. I'm just processing that information differently than you are. I will assess someone or a group of people quite quickly. Are they a threat? Do they look like a threat, or are they no factor? And then I go on to the next group. And I'm not looking, if I'm walking through London, I'm not looking 3 kilometers down the road. I'm paying attention to my city block, and that's it. The difference is there's always a portion of my brain when I'm in public. I'm sorry, let me take that back. I said always. It is not always, because I'm human and I fell. I attempt to always have my situational awareness at least activated when I step outside of my house. I have a rhythm that when I come out of my front door, that I pause for a couple of seconds before I go down the steps. And I just take a breath and I look around. I see what what vehicles are on the roads. That little pause and diligent check, that helps set the foundation for the rest of the day. So when I walk into a restaurant or I walk into a grocery store, I immediately just scan left to right. I'm not doing what they say in the movies, like checking for exits, counting the security guards. I'm not doing that. I'm taking a snapshot picture and asking myself, does this situation make sense? And I just continue. If the situation doesn't make sense, then I just simply change my direction and go somewhere else. I don't need to be there. But most people, they have this saying, and you're going to hear it. They say, oh, that will never happen to me. Like people at Bondi, they go, oh, that stinks that happened. I don't go to Bondi, it won't happen to me. And that, unfortunately, that's a culture here in America that I'm really trying to change for my clients, to never say that it won't happen to me.
Trevor, can we go back to the other color code? So green is to activate. What are the other two?
You have black, yellow, red, and white. Black is a condition that is the panic mode. It's when your brain kind of shuts down and goes to the fear, and you're no longer effectively operating. This is where most civilians will go to. They'll immediately go to what we'll call condition black. and then they'll just freeze up. Their decisions will be emotional based. They'll be illogical. They won't even recognize that they're in this color code. And so it doesn't really matter, like, if my company calls yellow this or CIA calls yellow a different vocabulary definition. It's about understanding what your awareness level is. And that's really what those color codes are. And so I teach one of the families that I have been working with probably about 12 months now. They've got a couple of small children, and we picked 3 color codes: red, green, and yellow, because they're going to learn about stop signs later on and traffic lights. And so we tell them green is like their good mood. And then yellow is, I'm a little bit uncomfortable and I feel like I want to go talk to my mom or dad. We explain to them that that condition, that feeling, is called yellow. And so we're associating a color and a name to a feeling, right? And when we do something simple like this, it keeps our brain on a logical track, as opposed to, if I don't explain the child, when you start to feel this emotion, if you don't control that and recognize it, it will continue to evolve. And then it turns into black, which is fear. And then you're not really of use at that point. So I don't want to go into the colors because it depends on which agency you're referring to. But the important part is that we need to understand what condition I am in for today. For example, when you leave your house in the morning, are you in a comfortable mood? Are you in a stressed mood? Are you paying attention to your environment? We all drive a car or, drive to work, and you'll get to work and go, I don't know how many stoplights I actually went through, because you weren't being aware. And that's probably, going back to the Bondi thing, this is probably the most frustrating thing with teaching people, is that we think that we're aware of things and we're really not. And so we have to overcome that. And the example that I use with the little kids, just using 3 simple color codes to describe their current feelings, is a framework that starts to evolve, that shows me, as long as I keep my mental frameworks moving, I can make decisions, no matter what color you want to refer to it as.
Trevor, you were in charge of training the Presidential Guard in Abu Dhabi. What did that job entail for you?
Oh, man. Abu Dhabi. So the United Arab Emirates, they have a unit that's called the Presidential Guard. They're a multi-force unit. Their equivalency to what we would call in the U.S. the United States Secret Service, that protects our presidents and some other VIPs. And then you have your tier 1 units, such as SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force. Their Presidential Guard unit encompasses all of that type of capability. And my role there as an advisor and instructor was 2 parts. One of it was to help develop and train one of their bomb squad units to react and respond not only within their country, but outside of their country as well. Another project, we worked on their chemical and biological response to terrorist attacks within their country. And then, of course, the primary was teaching them executive protection skills, from walking formations, driving formations, doing operations inside of Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and then some other less city-like locations.
How would you categorize the threat in a country like that? Because from an outsider's perspective, it seems quite safe. So I wouldn't have imagined that you would have to do explosive training and all this stuff with the Presidential Guard.
Yeah, it is one of the most safest countries that I've ever lived in. And I actually took my daughter when she was 10 years old. Her and I moved there. And I remember some of my family members like, I can't believe you're taking your 10-year-old to the Middle East. Yes, it's in the Middle East, but most people, when you say Middle East, they think about combat zones. Abu Dhabi and Dubai are not a combat zone. They're metropolitan cities. The culture is amazing. The food is great. It's a wonderful environment, but you still have heads of state or presidents of countries that still need protection. And the royal family, particularly the royal family in the UAE, their society loves them. Like, it is amazing to see the sheikh walk around with an entourage of his bodyguards, but then the local population that are praising them, something we don't really see here in the United States.
So you get up close with governments and leaders and presidents. Do you see them lying to their people?
Define lying.
Well, I guess, do you see, when you're in the room, you see the discussions that go on around these tables. So you would have this view, I guess, that we don't get to see.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, do you see some things and you go, well, hang on, that's not actually doing a good thing for the people of this nation?
Oh, 100%. So one of the jobs that I did in Iraq, I ran the security detail for the United States ambassador. And so I was privy in a lot of meetings with presidents and prime ministers of Iraq. I would listen to President Bush on video conference calls. And the conversations that I was privy to, I wasn't a part of the conversations. I was just in the vicinity listening to these conversations. They were very educational. And when I asked you about define the term or the word lying, I say that very specifically because my buddy Andy at Everyday Spy, when CIA teaches them about lying, in order for a statement to actually be a lie, there has to be intent to deceive you, right? So I have to look at the leaders, and when they say a statement that I know is not factual, I have to understand and assess, are they purposely trying to deceive their nation, their people, in which case it is or meets the requirement to be classified as a lie. And to be honest, I can't ever recall in any of those meetings where I heard a politician or a senior leader flat out lie to the population. Now, there's information that they will withhold. They will steer you or the story a very particular way. And I understand why sometimes. But to answer your direct question, I've never actually heard one of them say a flat out lie to the population.
You also worked as a private military contractor. That to me sounds like something out of like a Hollywood film. What is the difference between that and I guess just being in the military?
It was amazing. So let me clarify this, right? Because you could tell somebody to go drink a cup of coffee and that it was amazing, and others just don't like coffee. So the private military company that I did work for at the time was called Blackwater. And when I joined that company, it was a group of like-minded people. Like the people that they were hiring were me and my teammates. Like 3 of the guys that I was on a team with this company, I had been on an active duty military team with these guys. So it was one of the greatest transitions to go directly from active duty service to the Blackwater organization, because everybody at that time in 2004, 2005 were stepping out of the military directly into this role. So you were losing your military uniform and you're putting on some, contractor outfit and maybe involved a polo t-shirt at times. But the people, the men, the women that I worked with, we all came from the same backgrounds. We all had the same command structure. We're all still orientated to the mission and the belief in what we were doing. You still had the camaraderie from the brotherhood. It was truly phenomenal. Your paycheck just came from another company.
What kind of missions were you sent on?
My primary 2 mission roles that I performed, one was the team leader of the security detail to protect the U.S. ambassador. And then a second mission was we called door gunners. We sit on the side of a helicopter and provide aerial support to troops that are on the ground.
Wow.
The general public, we can feel that the world in 2026 is unstable. It doesn't feel like we've got our shit together at the moment, right?
Yeah.
That's not at all, does it?
How do you see it? Because you must see it completely differently to the way that we all see it. So what are you seeing that we don't see?
Man, that is a good question. I don't want to say I'm terrified of what the future is. Like, I'm pretty optimistic. Like, when I say that we're terrified, I'm a little concerned about what the world's going to look like for my children. But I think that's probably just a general parenting concern, despite whatever the environment is. So I try not to use that into my judgment. But when I look around at what's going on with the world from the last 3 decades, of conflict. You had nearly 2 decades, if not 2 decades, of conflict in the Middle East from Iraq and Afghanistan. All of a sudden, that dies down. And then you have this issue in Israel and Gaza. And then you have this Ukraine issue. And then you have Venezuela. And now you have this talk about Greenland. It's always something. And that's what bothers me is I'd like to go back and just say, people just get along, but there's always going to be savages, like we said with the Bondi attackers. There's always going to be savages there that, number one, we need to start holding people accountable for. That's one of our issues, particularly in America, that we don't hold people properly accountable on both sides, the law enforcement side and, of course, the criminal side. So I'm concerned with how the world's unity or direction is actually headed, right? So in COVID, you had talk about COVID passports. You remember that?
Yeah.
There was a lot of conversation, and in some countries, I was actually traveling for another company during COVID, and in order for me to get into certain countries, I had to show them a vaccination card, right? Not only my passport, but a vaccination card or your paperwork. Do you remember last time we heard law enforcement people asking them to see their paperwork? It brought up people's memories of Nazi Germany, like walking around in your own town. We had neighbors calling on neighbors. These are people in your community that if you lost power and water for a week, your neighbor to your left and right would be the first people that you would be reaching out to. Yet 2-3 years ago, we were picking up a telephone to report on them, right? So I'm really concerned about the unity of the people. That's my biggest concern, whether we're going to continue to diverge one another, not only in political, but how we raise our family, how we respect other countries. That's probably the thing that keeps me up the most at night.
You had close proximity to George Bush, and you get to witness Donald Trump. Donald Trump, loose mouth, great for TikTok. We get to see lots of short form videos of him just saying crazy stuff. I guess Bush was more reserved. Which president is better?
Oh, wow. That's such an open-ended question, right? So it goes back to define better, and better on what? Better on foreign policy, better on looking after the American people. I will say this about President Trump, particularly when he first took office the first time. One of the things that I respected is that he put Americans first. No matter where you were in the world, his priority of concern was the American population. And there's people, and I'm going to use you guys because you're Australian and you're sitting in Australia, would look at that and go, wow, that's pretty selfish. But what if I went to you and said, your Australian Prime Minister wants to prioritize you over me as a tourist in your country? How do you feel about that? You would probably say, well, he should because it's my country, right? So that's one of the first things I saw about President Trump. And then I noticed a lot of people did not like that, right? I don't think you can argue with that. It's something that every country has to do. I wish we would look at it holistically as planet Earth, like let's all get together and do good things for planet Earth. But individually, you have to look at your own state, and I'm talking about the United States as a single state or an entity. You have to preserve that. You have to preserve your values and your cultures. Abu Dhabi, Dubai, they have to do the same thing. So, Sonia, when you ask me, like, you really don't think about the violence and the explosives over there, that they need bomb squads. There's still savage people in the UAE. Like, they're not savages themselves, but they have people that have issues just like any other country, and you have to protect your leadership from those types of people.
Absolutely. Trevor, let's talk about the importance of decision making. From your point of view and what you've learned in combat, how can we as civilians implement better decision making?
Better decision making. Yeah. You can take my course. You can start there. All right. So better decision making, right? There's 3 things about the decision making process. Have you ever heard of a term called the OODA loop?
No.
It's spelled OODA, and it stands for orientate, observe, decide, and act. And you can only do this if you have situational awareness. You have to have that baseline condition of situational awareness. The first part of the decision-making process, particularly under pressure, is to slow the environment down. And when you slow the environment down, that allows you to do two things. It preserves your perception of the environment so that you can orientate and observe to the current situation. And that's really, really fundamentally important. So to make effective decisions under pressure, you go to the first pillar, you slow everything down so that you can preserve the perspective, so that you can orientate and observe to what is actually happening.
I want to jump in here quickly because I'm guessing there's executives that when you're saying slow everything down, how do you slow everything down? Or how do you slow the environment down?
All right, very good question, right? Because most people think we're just going to stop and freeze and do nothing. Like that's hesitation. And as I said earlier, that's going to get you killed, right? So to slow things down, let me give you an example. All right. One of my clients here in America, we're going through this scenario. They had they would be considered to be prepared. They've purchased a bunch of gear. They've went through various tactical trainings from shooting and medical training, and they thought that they were fairly prepared for multiple incidences. And then I started working with them. One of the reasons that they had contacted me was because they had an incident where late at night, they heard some loud noises and what sounded like glass breaking. They jumped up. They did everything they've been rehearsing. They jumped up out of bed, opened up their safe, grabbed their firearm, went through their house, and went to address this commotion. The equipment didn't fail. The mechanics didn't fail. What fell was their judgment. They failed to make a judgment call when they jumped out of bed and collected information. They skipped orientate and observe the situation. They went directly to the decision making. The decision was to grab their gun, and then their action was to go address this commotion, right? So this comes all the way back to in the beginning where we were talking about people's situational awareness. Just be more aware, right? So to answer your question on how do you slow it down, we use breathing techniques. Box breathing is a simple one, 4 seconds in, pause 4 seconds, 4 seconds out. What I'm trying to do is control my heart rate, my tempo, my breathing so that I can keep blood flowing to my brain so that I can actually take in external stimulus and I can process what's happening. That's what we really mean by slowing things down. If you've ever been in a room with a bunch of kids just running in and all of a sudden you go, wow, this is a bit chaos. It's because too much information is coming to your brain and you're getting overloaded, right? We talk about this in some of the spy tradecraft classes about when you first wake up in the morning, spend first 30 minutes, and do not look at an electronic device. But most people don't do that. They wake up in bed, grab their phone, and you're barraged with all this information, and your brain hasn't had time to actually process the fact that you're no longer asleep, the fact that you're standing up, you got to brush your teeth, drink water, go to the bathroom, and slowly prepare yourself into the day through a rhythm. Right? Most people skip that step. When we say slow it down, you can think of it as like that in the morning, like slow down, don't grab your phone. I'm not saying take 3 hours when you only need maybe 30 seconds, but you have to give yourself time to orientate and observe your surroundings. One of the easiest ways to do that is to stop and take a purposeful breath. So one of the teams that I was on, operating in a very small group of people, if you will, we had this framework. When we were inside of a building and there was a little bit of chaos that might have been going on, as soon as I get a moment, the first thing I say is breathe, check weapons. And I say it over the communication so that my team hears the command, breathe. And it's always said like that. It's always in a calm, strong, patient demeanor. And it reminds people, breathe, check my weapons. And as soon as I do those two things, I'm already going through this rhythm that I've developed through previous training. So I'm not asking people to go out there and do this on day one. You have to actually work at it. You have to practice it. But the framework is the holy grail. It keeps your thought process moving in a logical manner.
Just when you do that moment there where you're doing the breathe, check your weapons, there's that leadership in you that even we feel it here on this conversation. I imagine those scenarios that you're in, though, there's fear in you. How are you showing that feeling of like safety for the team, right? And I've got this, take a breath, check your weapons. But inside your mind, you're still going, I don't know if this is going to be okay. Like how are you controlling that?
Yeah. Hey, my man. Well, first of all of us are scared.
Yeah.
Just get it out in the open. We're about to take 4 people and go into a facility that has an unknown number of bad guys. Yeah, man. It's freaking scary. So we acknowledge that, but we also mitigate our risks. Number one, we are way better trained than most of the people that we go up against. And I don't say that cockily. I say that out of confidence because that's what we do. When we're not on missions, we are training. I can't tell you how many hours. That's all we do. We train, and we operate. We train, we operate. So we have high confidence in our skill sets and in the hardware and tools that we're using. And then fear, my man. This is one of my most favorite topics. I'm about to tell you something, and I don't know if it's factually, scientifically true, and I refuse to go research it because I don't care what the answer is going to be. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to believe it, and it's worked for me ever since I was taught this. Early 2000s, we had this person come to my unit and teach us about fear and anger. And this is the part that I don't know if it's true, but it's worked for me. You take fear and you take anger as emotions in your brain. We think psychologically that I can feel both these emotions at the same time, and we call that mixed emotions. But what this person taught to us was fear and anger cannot coexist at the same time. Your brain can toggle between the two so rapidly, we think we have mixed emotions. But the moment he told us that it cannot be done, wow, that's super simple. All I have to do is keep myself in a state of anger. Therefore, I can't feel fear. I can do that tomorrow. That's tomorrow's problem. I'll deal with that later. Right now, I don't need to feel fear. Therefore, I must feel anger. But there's a catch to this. The anger must be controlled. You must be in control of this anger. So each one of us on the team, we went through our own individual trials to come up with our own mantra that we would say to ourselves. That it's almost like a workout. When you do a warm-up, the warm-up is also a preparatory before you go do the actual workout. It's conditioning yourself, your mind, to get ready for the evolution of the workout itself. So when we say this mantra to ourselves, it has something to do very personal with me and family that puts me in a state or a condition of anger where I'm not in a happy mood. I'm still going to function and talk to you and be, respectful to you, but I'm purposely being angry. Like, I want to stay in this emotion. I don't want to be able to flip over to the fear, because I tell you what, it will happen. And then that person becomes into a condition black and they're not useful. They're actually a hindrance in combat. And I've seen this in combat. Mortars or rockets raining down on your position, and you got a couple of us going, oh man, this ain't good. Get small as you can. And then you have other people that they're not reacting that same way. And it comes back a lot to the training that we've been exposed to and that we've been able to make it through stress inoculation.
Trevor, you are talking a lot as if you've led multiple teams, which is fantastic. If we were to implement leadership in like a corporate scenario from what you've learnt, where would you begin to become the best leader possible?
Rules.
Okay.
This is an issue with the corporate world right now. And it ties in to veterans transitioning to civilian lives. Man, the rules in the military, there's a saying that they're written in blood. Like, somebody did something and were injured or killed. And so we made a rule, don't do that because bad things happen. So our rules in the military are designed based off of our safety, the success of the mission, and our rules help facilitate us doing our job. Where what I see in the corporate world is, I had a conversation with a director today about this, and they stated they're trying to get some younger engineers to get in alignments with a compliance. And I said, you failed right there. You hired these young engineers to be free thinkers, thoughtful, and to go out and solve problems that you can't solve because of the way you're thinking. Yet you're trying to make them fit your rules, which aren't based off the mission or the objective of the program. They're based off corporate politics. So most of the rules that I review from a corporation, they're based off protecting the image of the company, protecting the brand. They're based off legal and liability issues. They're really not set to help facilitate an employee to move forward and use critical judgment. Whereas in the military, we're expected to use judgment, and our judgment better be good, because if not, we're going to be held accountable. Where in the civilian world, you're really not allowed to make judgment calls. You're supposed to follow the policies and procedures and just be a cog in a wheel. So I think if we really wanted to change our corporate civilian culture, is you would start with your leaderships to review the rules. And are these rules outdated? Are they applicable anymore? Because maybe when they were made, the information you had then, it applied. A couple of years later, there's new information, new technology. Maybe these rules don't apply anymore. Maybe they're actually a hindrance. And unfortunately, what I see with the corporations in America, leaders are really hesitant to change policies and rules.
Do you think that that's sustainable now?
I think it's definitely sustainable. We're making these rules for what reason?
Yeah.
I don't want to go down the list. I looked up a few from, one was from the state of Indiana, and I'll just tell you, it has a rule that says you can't allow your monkey to smoke a cigarette. I don't know where that came from.
What? Yeah.
It's a rule. It's a rule. If you own a monkey, it's illegal to make that monkey smoke a cigarette.
That's crazy.
And I'm reading this going, oh, did my taxpayer dollars actually pay for this?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't we talking about a couple other issues? So somehow we've allowed our community of people all the way up to make these ridiculous rules and policies and not use good judgment, right? When somebody comes to you with a pack and says, hey, I have this new rule, why can't we take a person that has good judgment and look at it and go, hey, it's dumb, go away, right? We just don't do it. In the military, we absolutely do it. You come up to me with a stupid idea, I'm going to tell you it's dumb. I'm going to tell you why it's dumb. And I'm going to educate you on how to make it not dumb. And we're going to go complete our mission and we're going to be successful. But in the corporate world, it doesn't work that way.
You know, Steve Jobs would actually promote people in his business that would come up to him and tell him what he was doing wrong. Like actually come up, confront him, tell him this is completely wrong. And he'd end up promoting those people. That seems like a really healthy way to run a successful business. But I'm guessing a lot of leadership don't necessarily like that because they find that a threat, or they don't necessarily like the idea of the way of their thinking not being necessarily taken on board by their troops.
Yeah, Simon, you said something really, really informative that should be reiterated. You said the leadership. Most people that I see, they're not leaders. They're filling a spot and they have this false sense that they are a leader, but they're not. Like they don't even know better. So I don't get upset with them about it. So they need to go through the training, right? They need the frameworks to slow the environment down and make judgment decisions, not just knee-jerk reactions or emotional reactions. The thing that you said that's really important is Steve Jobs. I'm going to not speak for him, but I'm going to say some things that sounds like this. He could give fuck all about you. Like, dude, I don't care about you. I care about my product. I care about solving things, and you're either going to help me solve them or you're not. That was an amazing attitude to have because he didn't get his feelings hurt. Therefore, when Simon comes up and says, hey, Steve, you're doing X, Y, and Z wrong, Steve looks at him and goes, damn, you're right. Thank you for telling me. You're promoted because you're going to continue to solve problems. Whereas most people, they don't want you to come tell them what they're doing wrong because they're afraid you're going to take their job. And that is a flaw in our culture. In the military, we train our lower troops to take the person's job left and right of them and the job above them. I train the people below me to do my job so that, number one, if I get killed, the team will survive. The next person in charge can take over, right? Because I've been training and mentoring them. We say in the military, we try to work ourselves out of a job. I try to make it to where my team doesn't need me. Because once I do that, everybody on the team gets elevated. And if my leadership is doing their job, some of them will retire, there'll be an opening, and they'll be bringing me up. It doesn't work that way in the corporate world.
No. One of the things you mentioned there is when you are trying to train your team, I can imagine that trust plays an incredibly big role in having that team below you trust the judgment calls you're making, the decisions that you're going through. If you're in a leadership position now and you know your team doesn't trust you, how can you build that trust with them?
Yeah, so you mentioned this trust as part of the transition from military to civilian life. Trust in the military, you earn that trust through shared experiences, like miserable experiences. You're in the same uniform, you're in the same situation, whether it's out in the field or inside of a vehicle or in an aircraft. Your experience is the same as the person next to you. You have a different perspective that you're looking at from your lens, but there's this common shared, I'll say misery, like you've heard the term misery loves company. It's a common theme that we all go through together. And because I have this experience with the person next to me, whether I like them as a human being or not, they went through the same experience as me and survived. This builds a natural trust between us. And then when I say, or I'm ordered to go do something and I do it, and people see this, they go, oh, he's doing his job. They trust that you will go and do your job. And in special operations, if you don't do your job, you don't stick around. So we have this inherent trust built just by the processes of what we go through. It's not that we're trying to build trust. So it's really interesting, Sonia, how you said, if I was in a corporate team, how would I build trust, right? It's kind of default into us in the military. So now I've got to look at the corporate world. How do I make the team bond in a corporate world? Which really, as much as they say about team building events, this is why the corporate world has week-long, 2-week-long events that they actually say, we're going to go on a 1-week team building exercise. Take you away from your families for a week so that we can build ourselves a trust network so that when we go back to the office, we'll be more efficient, right? They're great exercises to do for a week, but you have to look at the individual people in a corporate setting. You only go to work for a few hours a day with these individuals. Everybody has their own external life. Where the military, it's almost as if the military is your life. And it's hard to, it's a little bit difficult to try to explain if you've never been in the military. But all the veterans that are watching this, they're going to know what I'm saying right away. And this is why I like to help veterans that are looking for civilian jobs or even have been a civilian for 10 or 15 years, how to actually fit in a little bit more. And I'm not trying to fit into the civilian world. I'm trying to make you see that the structure has changed. So, Sonia, I wish I had the perfect answer to say for corporations, this is how you build trust. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I would say hold people accountable. And this is, it seems so simple to say hold people accountable, but in the military, if I say, hey, I'm going to do an inspection on Friday of your vehicle, then Friday, it is exactly what I mean. I am going to inspect your vehicle on Friday. Whether you're ready or your vehicle's ready, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the inspection, and the results are the results, and the consequences are the consequences. There's no secrets. It's completely transparent. The corporate world, hey, I'm going to come inspect the vehicle on Friday. Friday comes. Oh, I'm not really ready.
Yeah.
All right, let's reschedule for Tuesday,
Yeah.
which becomes Thursday.
Yeah.
There's no accountability. How am I going to trust you? Right? So that's the first thing I would say. Hold people accountable, which goes back to society. Hold people in society accountable.
Trevor, you mentioned there that you've had shared horrific experiences with your team. To give the audience some context, what's the most horrific experience that you've been through?
Death of teammates. Like, man. I had one recently, like 12 days ago. Horrific experiences, again, what's kind of scary to me might not be scary to somebody else. Like, I enjoy jumping out of helicopters and airplanes. My sister, you're not getting her due. She did it one time and she was like, I will never do that again, right? So that was a horrific experience to her. To me, it's a fun time, right? So when I look at horrific experiences, the things that bother me from violent encounters is one, seeing the death of my teammates, just because I see what it does to their family, to their children, and it's that's heartbreaking. Besides that, I mean, experiences are experiences. You get shot at, grenades thrown at you. It's just part of war, and it just is. Like, it affects you, but it's just your job. You just go and do it.
And then you've been through this. How do you adapt to normal life? How do you go to the shops and pick up some baked beans to put on some toast when you've been through that kind of experience?
Oh, man, it's one foot in front of the other. I did another show one time where I told somebody my answer was drank a lot of whiskey, which I did for a couple of years because I couldn't get myself to fit into the civilian world. And that was my problem. I was trying to fit myself into an area that didn't understand me, right? When you go through high risk training and high risk evolutions, and you're expected to make sound judgment calls and then be held accountable for those things, you accept risk and you mitigate it as much as possible. But our risk in the military is defined differently from the corporate world. And so when I work in a corporate industry and I see some of the leadership getting really frazzled about something, I might have my toast and beans and sit in a corner and eat and just go, why are you guys so stressed? Why are you arguing about this? Like, it's so simple. Nobody's shooting at us. There's no missiles. Just slow down. Let's have a conversation and think through this. Like, I just find those things very simple. Whereas if you take a person who has never had an experience like mine, and you said the term you used was a horrific experience, right? So I have to look at them and go, what is your most horrific experience? Because this will tell me something about you. If your most horrific experience was the loss of a dog when you were 9 years old, okay, cool. I'm so happy for you that's the most horrible thing in the world. So I have to look at that and go, how do I speak and communicate to you? Because you're not going to see things the way I see things.
Of course.
And when I tell you, like, this issue that you're, whinging about is not really an issue, but to them it really is. And so the struggle is actually, how do I come to terms and communicate with this person that doesn't have a shared common background with me? And this is really why some veterans have issues transitioning to the civilian world, because the background comparison just isn't there.
Trevor, do you think technology is making us safer or putting us in more danger?
Both. Like, In the EOD and the bomb squad community, we always refer to us as being the good guys, the terrorists making the devices, as the bad guys. And we had this saying that it was a cat and mouse game. Like every time I disarm a terrorist device, they learn a new skill. They learn how to make it a little bit more robust. I have to go back and learn how to redefeat something else, right? So it's always this back and forth game. And I think that's kind of where the technology is. Like, for example, right now, I am sitting in the state of Georgia in the United States of America, talking to you over in Australia. We have communications. It's recording this audio, video. We get to see each other's face nearly real time. 20 years ago, there's no way this was going to happen. I would have to record a video, put it on a tape, and mail it to you, right? So the technology is super convenient and super useful, but we have to do our due diligence of not being relying on it. And I always go back to the perfect GPS example, right? In people's phones and cars. The military, because I'm old enough that when I went first few years in the military, we used a map and a compass. That's how we learned land navigation. If you gave a, I don't know, 24-year-old, 25-year-old person right now a map and a compass and said, I need you to navigate to your next destination, not many people could actually do it. If you put them in an unknown environment, of course, if they know the streets, fine. But if you put them in an unknown environment, they're not going to know how to potentially navigate like that. And it's not, I'm not saying it's because they're not intelligent. It's because they've relied on the technology to give them the directions their entire life. Like you guys are probably old enough that you remember looking at a map, you know what a compass is. Some of the young engineers that I work with right now, they've never seen a compass. They don't even know that you have to hold a compass flat. Like, oh, you can't tilt it? It doesn't work right? Like, and I shake my head at it and go, how do you not know this? Well, you don't know it because it wasn't taught in your school. Your parents didn't teach you. You didn't go to a military course that taught you. So my job now is to teach you how to use this because you need it for what we do at work, right? So I just teach them that. So I think technology, it's phenomenal. I think we can all agree that it's amazing, but it does have its security issues that we are probably not doing enough due diligence to protect people.
Trevor, you mentioned that you were privy to conversations with George Bush. But you weren't actually a part of those conversations. So I'm guessing you were an observer in those conversations. Sometimes being an observer of a conversation, you are able to take in a lot more information and you get a lot more perspective of what's really going on. Is there something that you learned from those conversations around George Bush as an observer?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Yeah, so observing, because like if I was watching you two have this conversation, I'm not biased to what you were going to say to her or vice versa. So when the ambassador's having a conversation with the president of the United States of America, I'm not lobbying for one or the other. I'm just there being aware and listening to both sides of their conversation. And then I'm trying to understand why they made a decision. And this goes back to the whole situational awareness, the mindset of decision making. I'm listening to the president of the United States of America tell this individual that this is my decision and then explain why he came up with that decision. When he had like 30, 40 different options, why did you come to this one decision? That was a very educational opportunity for me to witness because I saw it from such a high level, right? Like normally I'm boots on the ground. I have my team. But here I am, I'm listening to the president of the US have a conversation and explain why he made a judgment or why he chose one judgment over another one. And so to hear his perspective on it and the White House's perspective was an eye-opening experience because it's a different point of view. When I make a decision, I'm looking at it from my selfish person. I'm looking at it based on my family and then based on my community. Where the president of the United States is looking at it for the benefit of the U.S., at the time, the benefit of Iraq, the local Middle East countries around Iraq, and then the world stage. So it wasn't that he was just considering, oh, well, this is the best interest of the United States. It was all these other factors that were coming into play. And it really highlighted to me how much they actually slow things down so that they can observe and consider all these other aspects.
Trevor, what role does preparedness play, I guess, from a military point of view and transitioning that into a civilian without being like doomsday preppy? How prepared should we be for emergency situations?
Well, that's a great question. Here in the United States, we have this organization called FEMA. It's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they have a standing rule or advice that every household in America should keep 1 gallon of water per day per family member. And I'll stop there and use this as one example. So they've given the guidance based off some other data. I teach my clients to have a minimum of 3 gallons per day. So 3 times the amount, and for very specific reasons. One of the comments I tell people is, Sonia, if your government came out and said you should have 1 gallon of water per day for 7 days stockpiled in your house at all times, and you were a good citizen and you did that, day 8 comes and you're out of water and your government's not responded to you, how upset would you be?
Oh, I'd be livid.
Why did you only buy 7 instead of 8 gallons?
Well, I guess I got lazy or I didn't think anything would happen.
Or you took their recommendation
Yeah.
and didn't think through the processes, right?
Sure.
And so the point that I try to make with my clients and what I'm saying right now is this comes back to accountability of yourself, right? People ask me, Trevor, should I prepare for 1 month, 3 months, or 6 months? Shit, my man, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
what are you preparing for? Right? So let's answer this question. What are you preparing for? The United States just had a winter storm come across, right? And a few days before it was supposed to hit, the gas stations are backed up. The propane facilities are all backed up. There's stuff flying off the shelf because people are stockpiling last minute, as they should. You should take it while you can, right? But the concern is the accountability. You cannot prepare for every situation. You cannot, right? So here in this state, some neighbors were asking me like, hey, what are you preparing for? And I said, well, there's a potential ice storm and snowstorm coming. So I'm not worried about 120-degree temperatures. So I don't need my air conditioning, but I need a heater, a fireplace, dry wood, blankets, and I need my shelter to stay intact because it's potentially going to get cold if you lose power. Right. So we prioritize what I'm preparing for because, the reference I gave you, the guy that wanted to do all the tactical training and buy the guns, like that man was waiting for a home invasion. Like that's really what he was planning for. And I said, you live in a community that home invasion is a little bit low on the list of other things that you should be preparing for. So for the preparedness, I love that our countries give us like some sort of guideline, except if you're really going to prepare, you have to look at your own unique situation. You have to look at yourself. Like, where do you live? What does your family consist of? Are there children in your house? Are there elderly in your house? Do you plan on leaving the area in a crisis situation? And if so, where are you going to go? Because if you're going to travel, say if I didn't want to be in Georgia when the snowstorm hits, I'll just go to Florida. It's an 8-hour drive. I know a couple of friends of mine here. That's exactly what they did. They packed an overnight bag and said, we're going to go down to Florida and stay on the beach. We wanted the vacation anyhow. So they just left the area and they don't even have to deal with the winter storm. So for people for preparedness, I want them to take this away. You are accountable for yourself. If you have that 7 gallons, Sonia, and day 8 shows up and you don't have water, you are immediately going to blame it on your government or whoever told you to go get 7 gallons. But the problem is yours. You're the one without the water. So I try to stress the clients that accountability, it's on them. I'm going to give you guidance. I'm going to help you prioritize what events to plan for for very specific logical reasons that I understand, and I'm going to help educate you on that. And then your preparedness plan is going to be very unique for you. There'll be commonalities to other people and to myself, but it is a plan that should be specifically tailored to you. And unfortunately, most people won't do it. And it's not because they're not intelligent. It's they're lazy, convenience of life. If you want a coffee, you go to the coffee shop. You got shops near your house 24 hours a day. Like people, it's so convenient nowadays.
Trevor, how does overconfidence become a liability in survival situations?
Oh, my man, you ever read a book titled, give me a second. I'll come back and tell you the title of the book. It's exactly about the psychology of this, of how overconfidence or skilled people or really smart people make some really dumb decisions. And I hate to say it, you've got to slow down, right? There's plenty of stories where people that are more than competent have found themselves in a situation that on paper is not really an issue to them, but they end up having a death or a bad event occur in that situation. And when we go back and look at it, it's because they fail to pause and slow down and see the environment. Right? A really good example of this is a firefighter up in the northeast of the U.S. This firefighter was part of the rescue team. He was involved in the law enforcement side, but his primary role was a firefighter on the rescue side of it. He went out for an evening hike in his hometown, and they found him a few days later had died from hypothermia. He had went out for a hike that he'd done many, many times. The weather started to change, and instead of recognizing like this weather is moving in and I don't have the right attire on for it, instead of completing the hike, I should turn around and go back to my vehicle. He continued on because that's what he normally did. The weather moved in, the rain came in, the temperature dropped, and he ended up getting hypothermia, and he sat down to try to, what we suspect, to warm up, and ended up freezing to death. So really smart, intelligent people can get themselves in trouble, again, because we don't slow down to see or to become aware of the changing environment. And you remember the third pillar that I said was recognize what's changing in the environment. And this is where most overconfident issues happen, is we get 1 and 2, no problem. But number 3, I'm kind of in a rhythm and I kind of stop paying attention to what's changing around me. And that's where we get bit in the butt. I'll tell you a story where slowing down saved my life and definitely saved some lives of some enemy combatants. We did this mission. We call it a QRF mission. It stands for a Quick Reaction Force. It's my team's day off, if you will. We're in Iraq. We are working 3 days on and 1 day off. That day that you're off, we're using that day to go to the range, continue shooting tactics, do some intelligence investigation, reading some reports, and then the entire 24-hour period, you're on emergency call that the other teams that are out operating, if another mission comes up and they're too busy to support that, you'll be that team that gets called. We had an instance where a group of enemy combatants overran an outpost. And this outpost, it was only about 20 kilometers outside of Baghdad, but the outpost was a group of civilians that had local national security guards, and they were in a complex or a compound that was surrounded by concrete walls that are about 12 feet high. There were some enemy combatants that came in there and started shooting up the place. And so my team got activated and they said, you're going to take 2 helicopters, you're going to fly down there and you'll land and you'll extract these people. And there's about a dozen of them. And so you're going to extract those people and then return back to this base. All we can tell you is that the local security has left and that enemy combatants are inside the compound and they're shooting. So get going. So we got in a helicopter and we're flying down there. I gave looked at some aerial imagery and gave my team a quick brief. To the east of this complex was a waterway and a small village with one bridge that crossed over it. And then to the west was like a crop field with no crops. It was an empty field. And then a couple hundred yards away was a palm tree plantation. So my helicopter goes in and lands. The second helicopter orbits overhead and looks down inside. And they're trying to give me a report of where the enemy combatants are, how far they are from the exit that I'm about to make entry into. When the helicopter landed and I dismounted, coming out of the south entrance was these 12 civilians waiting on us to come pick them up. And I'll never forget seeing their face. Like, they were terrified. Like, people are half dressed. Some people had body armor. Some people didn't. And some people had envelopes and briefcases. And one guy had a suitcase. And we know that they had been told or instructed to burn as much classified material as possible, bring other material with them, and leave all personal items behind. So the guy in the very back, fortunately, first of all, I didn't have to enter the compound. They were already coming towards me when I landed. So I step outside of the helicopter and I start counting them on. The last guy that's carrying this suitcase, it slips out of his hand and he drops it. He looks down at the suitcase and he looks up at me. And I had this realization in my head, like, this out of shape, overweight individual is going to leave that there. And he does. He just takes off running to the helicopter. So I go on my comm mic and I tell the pilot in command that I was going off comms, which means I'm separating, for us, it meant I'm separating myself from the aircraft. So I disconnect my comm link. I disconnect a harness, a tether that I had connected to the aircraft. And I go out and I grab this case. As I go to pick up the case, I don't know why, but I hit the ground as flat as I could. I caught a glimpse of the tail rotor coming towards me, and I just flattened myself out on the ground. The tail rotor, which is the rotor on the back of the helicopter, goes across the top of my backpack and then takes off. And I'm looking over my shoulder while I'm laying there, watching the bottom of my helicopter fly away. I'm watching the sister ship come out of orbit over the compound and follow in behind them. And so I jump up to my feet and I turn around towards the entrance. 9 enemy combatants file out of that and stand side by side about 15 feet in front of me. They all have their weapons, hodgepodge of weapons. There was an Uzi, which was really odd to me. There's a couple of AK-47s, a couple other weapon systems, and a couple of them had some old M16 US-like rifles. When they all came out of that entrance, they all had a hand up cheering, and all their weapons were pointing at the ground, and they were all cheering, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. And I'm muzzle on them. And we just paused. Like, if I start shooting them right now, there's 9 of them and there's me, but they're not pointing their guns at me yet. So let me see if I can hold this position for a minute while I try to get on the comms and call the aircraft back to my position. Pretty soon, my teammate's going to realize I'm not on board and they're going to come back for me. So I just need to keep the situation under control. Probably 7 different conversations started taking place in my head. And this is where the special operators mindset comes into play. Our ability to make decisions, effective decisions under pressure. It's amazing. Like, you can't function in special operations unless you acquire this skill set. So I'm assessing every single one of these individuals. And it sounds weird to say it now, but I was honestly prioritizing which one of them I was going to shoot first. And the guy with the Uzi on the far left was the guy that I was going to shoot first. And there was a very specific reason for this. It has to go with tactics and the way they were presenting themselves. But I had made this decision. If X or Y happens, if one of them pulls a muzzle up, if another one comes from behind them, or if a grenade comes over the wall, then the fight's on. He gets shot first. I move this direction, and I move this direction for a reason. So in about a 5-minute period, I had these different conversations. I call them swim lanes in my brain going on. every time I thought of a question, the answer was already there. It's like I knew what I was supposed to do. Assessing every single one of them, being aware of the situation that my helicopter, I can hear that's getting farther away. I know that I don't want to go this way for various reasons. This way is a bit of a risk, but less risky compared to my other options. It took about 5-6 minutes. Eventually, it calmed down. There's more to that story, but the helicopter eventually comes back. These people leave, and we all separated. But that situation highlighted to me that the only reason I'm alive is because of the way I make decisions, the way the training programs that I've went through and the instructors that I've had access to, beat that, if you will, into us, that you have to make logical decisions and you have to slow the environment down. And so if you were to ask somebody like, hey, you have 9 armed enemy combatants in front of you, do you really want to take a pause and breathe? Like, it's really hard to explain somebody like you actually have to slow the environment down. And that story was like the catalyst to me of figuring out why my mind works differently from some of the other people that I know. And that was the catalyst that got me to build the framework of those 3 pillars.
Trevor, we like to end our episode with our guests sharing an item that is important to them. Is there an item that you'd like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, one simple rule for survival, and this is survival if you're having a conversation with your loved one, with your children, with your employer. And people ask me, because I do a lot of preparedness work, they always ask me like, what's one rule for survival? And unfortunately, people think about surviving as like going out into the woods and surviving. But I'm talking about surviving relationships, emotional, physical relationships, corporate relationships, business relationships. The thing that you want to do is protect and preserve your ability to make the next decision. Like, this is one of the most fundamental things. Like, I'll say it again. You want to protect your ability to make the next decision, right? This is the third pillar of our decision making is you never want to commit to a decision that's not recoverable from. For example, bomb disposal, disarming bombs. In the movies, they always talk about cutting the red wire, right? When we disarm bombs, we make sure with the most highest probability based off risks and mitigation that the action I'm about to take, I fully understand the consequences and I'm willing to accept those consequences. Or, and this is all based off probabilities, or I don't make that judgment. I go and choose a different judgment. And I've seen so many disastrous failures because people made a decision that's not recoverable from. And so my takeaway to everybody that I always meet is protect your ability to make your next move.
Trevor, we have loved this conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Trevor.
I appreciate it, guys.